Greetings everyone, your favorite episode, another review for you. So this company called Angel's Horn got into contact with me, and I reviewed a turntable in the past. And well, I didn't give it favorable reviews because of the motor speed was kind of wonky. They did send me another motor and it seemed to do better. So I'm kind of surprised, since I was so critical of the first turntable, that they wanted me to review another one. And they wanted to send another turntable, but I asked if I could review this unit here, the AH6, because it's more of a music system to me, because it contains an integrated amplifier, external speakers. It has a line input so you can connect, say, a cassette deck or CD player or some other line source, Bluetooth, and of course the turntable. And I kind of like the power meters on the front here. So what I'll do here, we'll go over this thing, quick sample, and I'll put it on the audio analyzer and see what it's all about. See the output power and the frequency response and all that stuff I usually do. Okay, I've gone handheld shaky cam mode. So let's take a look at the front of the unit. So our input and speed selector switch here on the front. You can select the mode you want to use. And of course line in, speed, and Bluetooth. On the front here we have the meters. They are backlit. So we'll check those out in action here momentarily. Over here we have the volume control and off. We have the turntable with the aluminum platter and the felt mat. AudioTech AT3600, your pretty typical but decent entry-level magnetic cartridge. So on setting up the turntable, it does have the counterweight and the anti-skate weight over here. I did have some issues getting the weight right. I couldn't get this tone arm to float properly, so I did twigulate the little screws there on the gimbal. Ended up using my scale to properly set the weight. So yeah, that's kind of an issue there, getting that set up properly. Taking a look at the back of the unit, I like seeing this, a pitch control. So instead of having to take the unit apart, using a screwdriver to adjust the motor on a lot of units, you can just set the pitch here if necessary. We have the line input, line out connectors. Of course the speaker terminals, power, and the main power switch. The included speakers are a pleasant surprise. I wasn't expecting this level of quality. I was expecting some, just speakers good enough to get by, but these have removable grills. They have a nice fit and finish. They continue the cherry veneer that the rest of the unit has. You get a silk dome tweeter, 4-inch woofer. Around back here it is a ported design. You do get the basic spring terminals, but I've seen some of the cheap included speakers where the wires hardwired coming through a little hole. So yeah, these are a little bit nicer than I expected. So how do they sound? That's the important thing, and we'll find out shortly. Sound quality wise, well, I can't really show through my camcorder microphones, but pretty decent. Nothing really to complain about. It's not going to be like a more expensive set of hi-fi speakers, but it does deliver a decent sound. I must admit, though, I have a guilty pleasure. I like this kind of music. Yeah, it kind of tempers me before I put on Led Zeppelin or AC/DC. But yeah, I like this kind of music. If I might make a suggestion to these manufacturers of these turntables, I would really appreciate an auto stop feature at the end of the record. I mean, it doesn't have to be an auto return, but just stop. That way, you know, when the music's done, I don't have to rush over and get the record off. Otherwise, it would just stay spinning. I know it adds more complexity in parts, but I don't see that being a big deal. I would think having that would be a huge convenience factor, at least to me. Checking the line input with my music player. This does have a line output mode. Just want to make sure the gain is about right, because I've seen amplifiers where they have the gain set too low and you have to turn the thing all the way up to get a decent level of sound, but they seem to have this one set just about right, which is pretty good. Now I am noticing one thing with this unit is excessive noise, and hopefully the camcorder picks that up. But yeah, even sitting back here I can hear it. You know, a couple meters away it's a little harder to hear, and you're probably not going to notice that when playing music, but yeah, I am noticing excessive noise. Okay, it's time to send this thing to the asylum. That's what it says here. I'm going to hook it up to the audio analyzer. I'm going to check the frequency response, the distortion, the output power, and all that good stuff. And my battery warning just came on, so better recharge the battery and move ahead. Okay, I have the Quantasylum's output going through an attenuator into the phono preamp, just connecting to the leads on the tone arm there. And I'm just coming off of one channel of the Quantasylum. That way I can be assured that the signal is the exact same level, so there's no issues with imbalance for my attenuator. And yeah, that's almost a 2 dB difference in signal level, but it does seem to be following the standard IRAA preamp curve. You know, if we use -20, if we just use that as 0 dB reference point, you see we're pretty close. Not perfect, but pretty close. And 20K would be, let's see, right here. Yeah, that's exactly 20 dB down from this point, and this is like 18, so it's not quite perfect there. And again, there is some imbalance there in the channels. Okay, so now we're looking at its line input to its line output. In other words, no phono equalization on this curve. I just want to see what its circuit's doing, how linear it is. So at 20 we're about half a dB down, maybe not hi-fi, but certainly not an issue, and pretty flat at 20K, yeah, just the slightest. But there is a very small amount of imbalance between the channels. So the thick line is 1 dB, so this is like less than a fifth of a dB imbalance. Not really a big deal. Line in to line out again, we're looking at distortion at 1 kilohertz, and it's very good, 0.006. Okay, measuring the output, both channels driven, into a 4 ohm load, since that's what the speakers are. So looking at the waveform, it seems to clip at around 11 volts. So I'm about as high as I can get. So it's putting out a little over 8 watts just before clipping. 8 watts per channel. Okay, we're 1 watt into 4 ohms, 1 kilohertz distortion measurement. And it's looking pretty good. 0.03. I like to see under 0.1, and we're definitely doing that. Something strange goes on when I go above 6 watts. See, around 6 watts, distortion's still under 0.1, which is good. The waveform looks nice. But let me crank the amplitude up. You see, let's let it catch up here. You see the distortion. Now it's approaching 2%. Let's go up a little more. You can see the waveform starts to get wonky. See around crossover here is a little bit of a wonkiness going on. And it just appears out of nowhere. Let me go up a little higher here. Thing decided to turn. Okay, we hit clipping there. Maybe it's something it does right before clipping. So now we're clipping. We're into clipping. And I'll drop it down a notch. So let this catch up. So yeah, we're out of clipping, but we get a little bit of kind of wonkiness going on here with the waveform. It's not smooth anymore. It's got a little gidget in its step, I guess you could say. It's right around crossover. Now I turned it back down. It's under 0.1. It's nice and smooth again. Just out of curiosity, I set the load to 8 ohms. And now we're just under clipping. And it's nice and smooth. Distortion is very low. Well under 0.1. And I didn't set the software to read 8 ohms, so you have to divide that by 2, so it's like 5.5 watts. But it seems to me that the amp in this thing doesn't like 4 ohm loads at higher output levels. Frequency response of the amplifier. And got a little bump here. I kind of wonder if this might have a loudness contour to the volume control. What I'll have to do is set it to a lower level and see if this bump becomes more prominent. But anyhow, looking at what we have here, we're about 4 dB down at 20 kilohertz. We are significantly down. Well, depending on where you want to set your reference point. If you ignore the loudness bump, you know, we're not too bad at 20 dB. But here at 20 kilohertz, we're 2, 4, 6, around 6 dB down, I would say, from flat. And at 10, we lost a couple of dB. So not the flattest response. Let's take a look at 8 ohms. Yeah, things improved quite a bit at 8 ohms. Yeah, we barely dropped at 10, but we still are down at 20K. So it's like the amplifier in this thing is designed more for 8 ohm loads, but not 4 ohm loads because of the issues we've been seeing here. Well, I don't know what the hell this is, folks, because I turned the volume down where a loudness contour would be more prominent. Now it's more of a flat response. I don't see that bump anymore. But the 20 hertz roll off is pretty significant. You know, we're 6 dB down. And the roll off starting around 100 hertz, a little bit above. And 20K is about the same as before. Switching back to 4 ohm, you can see as the quantisylum takes samples and catches up, how that roll-off becomes very prominent at the high end. Okay, speed variance with the pitch control. It was very, very slightly off, so I tuned it so it's holding pitch very, very well. and there's the slightest wobble in the speed, but it's very, very minor. Nothing like that other turntable where it was shifting, it would go up and down a little bit. Another thing I should mention is that this turntable comes with an alignment protractor for aligning the cartridge. And it's important to do that because 3 out of 3 of these turntables that I reviewed were not in alignment in the inner grooves. So you can loosen the screws and align it here. There are videos on how to do this. I'm not going to explain it here. But these are never aligned properly out of the factory, so I recommend lining it up. Okay, enough tests of the Angel's Horn AH6 turntable. And yeah, I could go down the rabbit hole of tests and all that stuff, but I think that's enough. Okay, the positive points of this thing. I really like the looks of it. Fit and finish seem pretty good. I like the meters here. I like the fact that you have input options. Motor seems to be more steady than the other one I reviewed. I like that it comes with speakers that sound decent, and it does, to the ear, sound fine to me. I mean, it's not a hi-fi device or anything like that. It's a good entry-level machine, and it's miles and miles better than those cheap suitcase turntables. On the negative side, I had some issues getting the tracking force set up properly with this wonky gimbal. Other negative was the background hiss. Probably not an issue to most people. Output power is not really much, but for those small speakers, you don't really want to put too much before they start compressing the bass and everything. In fact, the meters are pretty accurate. When you crank it up, it never gets beyond this point. So I'm not sure the reason for the 300 watts and the reference decibel level is at 100 watts. They got 0 here, and it's never going to get there. This 0 point should be maybe at 20 or just below, or actually 10, I would guess. And the final issue I had was, well, the amplifier seems to be really meant for 8 ohm loads. I was seeing all the wonkiness going on when measuring it at 4 ohms. It just worked a lot better at 8. So in closing, yes, I would recommend this, but with some reservations. Just don't expect hi-fi system quality. Don't expect a lot of power. But for a budget entry turntable, I'd say it's pretty decent. And with that, I'll wrap it up, and thank you for watching.